We're going to talk about intuition today, and Claire joins me from Bogota, I think it is, in Colombia. Welcome back, Claire.
Hi, I'm in Medellin, Colombia, not Bogota.
Medellin.
Colombia.
There you go. I don't know Colombia. I've been to Colombia. Don't know it that well, but Claire, I thought would be a great person to talk to about intuition today. I call it 3 ways to enhance your intuition because there's 3 ways that have helped me in recent years to connect with intuition and live from my intuition. But Claire, I thought would be a great person to talk to about this subject because Claire, whenever I connect with Claire, she seems to be in a different country, which is amazing. I think initially when I first connected, you were in Switzerland, then you went over to the Far East for a while. Yeah. Now you're in Colombia, and it's like, I love that. I love the way you just you're just living life to the fullest, living your best life. You know, you're just seeing out all the world. And whenever I ask people in the group, like, what would you do if money was no object? A lot of the time people say, oh, what I would do is travel the world and invest in my own healing, something like that, invest in a retreat center or something like that. But travel is a big one that comes up for people. And so I wonder what it is that holds people back. And, you know, I think a lot of it, if I kick this off now, when we talk about intuition, is that we live from the mind, that we live from the conditioned mind, which is focus number 1 on survival, really. And when you're living from your mind, when you believe you are your mind and you believe in your thoughts, then you're going to live quite a limited life, I would say, which I think is what most people are. I think there's that book that I reference a lot by Bronnie Ware, who was an end-of-life nurse in palliative care, and she listed like the biggest regrets of the dying, and I think one of them always sticks with me is that I didn't live a life true to myself. Now, what that means to me is that we've lived a life based on other people's expectations, societal expectations, and not lived a life true to our own intuition. In other words, we've been following the mind, believing the mind, which means us staying very small, and as we are, whereas the soul, for me, or the spirit, higher self, is guiding us towards expansion. It wants us to expand, it wants us to grow, it wants us to heal. But that voice is a quieter voice that is difficult to access unless you bring yourself to stillness. Whereas the mind is very loud, as we know. It's continually chirping away all the time. And if that's the only voice we know, and that's the only voice we're familiar with, then that voice is going to guide us towards a life of ego, basically, of the small self. It wants us to stay small. It doesn't want us to expand because it's only focused on survival. And any perceived threat to that, to our survival, it will kind of try to take us away from that. So, for example, moving to Colombia, the mind, I'm guessing, Claire, when you thought about this, I know you attended an ayahuasca retreat over there initially, probably the mind came up with 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't do that, or you shouldn't move to the Far East, or you shouldn't, whatever it might be, invest in yourself, in your own healing. But it's really a question then of how do we still the mind? How do we get familiar with this quieter voice of the intuition, which can guide us towards a life of true fulfillment and abundance and everything else that comes with that? How do we connect with that? And then how do we stay in alignment with that when the mind is just so overwhelming and so loud? So I wonder what comes up for you, Claire, when initially, before I go into my 3 ways, when you talk about intuition, how do you live a life from your intuition and connect to it?
Well, it's a good question. I think it like different stages and different things, the mind gets involved to different levels. Like there are for sure times when, yeah, like it's like, I think now, and this might not be like easy to like feel into for some people who are not down the path of like, you know, following your intuition, but like I'm now at a point where like I'm asking myself, it's almost like you could almost ask yourself like, what would love do? Like what would self-love do? Like what would evolution do? And what's the other thing? Like, oh, what would fear do? It's like, yeah, this is fear. And so I'm like, if I feel like, I'm like, okay, why would I not do this? And it's like, yeah, because I have like, I'm just literally like shaking with fear just thinking about this thing. And it's like, well, that's fear. So that's probably not an indication of what's good for me, because like if it's just fear that's stopping me, then that's just fear, and that's always going to be there. And that's probably not what should dictate my life. Like, yes, fear is a beneficial thing, and it's like a thing we need biologically. But and I'm like, okay, I'm terrified to do this thing. It's like, well, it's probably a sign I should do this.
Yes,
chances are I'm terrified of the growth. I'm terrified of the discomfort. I'm terrified of what people are gonna say. I'm terrified of, you know, X, Y, and Z. And like, then when you're like, and sometimes we don't, like, sometimes it's very subtle, right? And sometimes you don't even get to feel that fear. Sometimes like the mind is sensing it's there. So it's like, you shouldn't do this because then this and this and this and this could happen, and you're gonna run out of money, and it's dangerous, and this person's gonna hate you, and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, so it's like, and you're going to feel sick and blah, and, you know, like whatever it is. Right. So it's like, yeah, like it's, for me, it's like, okay, like that's just fear. So like, if I don't act according to fear, then what would I do? Well, I would do this thing. And then I'm like, okay, I'm so scared, but I'm
yes. That's why I love that question. Like, what would you do? I always ask the question in the group now and again, like, what would you do if money was no object? Like I said earlier. And what that does is it kind of takes the mind out of fear for a moment so that you can actually see what you really want from life. But I think for so many of us, it's like our lives are governed by fear. And often that fear, I think, around money is a big one for people. It like stops in our tracks. The mind knows that it can use money as a way to, or fear of not having money as a way to stop us. Like, you might be, initially there might be a real call. The way I do this now is like, I feel into a decision. Like, for example, I talked about this before. I went to Costa Rica in January on this week-long ayahuasca retreat. And whenever I kind of brought it to mind, there was a feeling in the center of the chest. For me, I connected intuition through the body, and particularly from the heart center in the center of the chest. When I asked myself, do you want to go to Costa Rica and do this retreat? My heart center expanded and opened up. For me, that is my higher self saying, do that, go that way. But then the mind comes in and says, well, can we really afford it? Blah, 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 blah. And it's trying to then stop me doing that because it's a perceived threat to survival. But even though there's no threat to survival, the idea of investing in something that isn't directly associated with my survival, the mind will try and talk us out of that because it doesn't want us to expand, doesn't want us to grow, doesn't want us to heal, wants us to stay where we are because we're alive. And I like what you said earlier in that it has its place. It's not like we're demonizing the ego or the mind here. It's got a really important place in our evolution, like keeping us alive in day-to-day human life. It's really important. That mind is on the lookout for threat all the time. You know, the ego gives us that sense of separateness so that, you know, we don't walk out in front of a car or something like that. It's like, yeah, it has its place. It is important in our day-to-day lives, human lives. But when it comes to our evolution, it's very limited. And we live from the mind, we are going to live a very small life. Yeah. So for me, it's about checking in with okay, like I said, do you want to go to Costa Rica? Heart expands. I can feel it filling up now as I talk about it. And you can always ask that question. Like, do you want to do this healing program? Just feel into it. Do you want to do that? Or do you want to go on this night out tonight? And I can feel the idea of me going on a night out tonight. It's like shrinking my heart chakra. So I know that that's not something that's aligned for me at the moment, but it might be for you. So it's about checking in with that. And a lot of the work we do, Claire, is around, because that initially I think it was quite hard for people when I work with people to actually even be able to connect with the heart or connect with the body. Initially, if you've lived a life from mind, for a lot of people, it's like there's a lot of numbness to feel with first to get actually to feel into the body again. So I know from personal experience, it's not something that comes straight away that you're able to do that. But if you really start to focus on this kind of work, meditation, and bringing awareness to the body, you can start to reconnect again with the intuition. Has that been your experience as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like just sort of, you know, like yeah, like on one hand, you'll learn to like tune into yourself. On the other hand, it comes with like some like teachings, like knowledge. So you give something to the mind, like you give it concepts and like frameworks and like frames of reference and like ways to understand things. So it's like you sort of also like you like slowly leaning into the process of like, I'm not crazy. Like, because so when I was younger and like, when I was a teenager and then, in my early 20s, I was like the rational girl. I was like looking at other girls who were like, it was like, they're so emotional and like, they just like, it's stupid. They just make decisions based on their emotions. Like it's not logical. Like they just choose to stay here because they're in love with a guy or because they're too comfortable or whatever. They're scared of, so, and I was like, well, I'm a rational girl. Like, I'm just gonna like write it down. Like, this is the best thing for me, and I'm gonna go. Which, like, sometimes, it's appropriate. It's like, it's like the emotion is fear or like an unhealthy attachment to a person who's not good for you or not even interested in you. Like, that's not a healthy decision, right? But like, also sometimes we're like, well, I really want to go and become a singer, but I'm gonna go and study law because that's what my mind tells me to do. That's the better thing, right? So there's there's like nuances to both sides, right? But yeah, like I thought like making decisions based on emotions was just like was not a good thing at all. But I guess I've always had that, like, I started traveling when I was like 16 years old. I moved abroad for the first time for a few months. And then like as soon as I finished high school, like I left for university, I moved abroad and spent my summers like, going to different countries, doing fun things. So like I always had that sense of like, I never had that like, oh my God, I need to do the best thing for my, CV or whatever. So I think I always had that like lust for life, like that drive that was like, like, yeah, like I'm gonna also have fun, right? But yeah, so like I think also just like sort of being told and like being sort of encouraged by somebody who's like doing the work, like a little bit spiritual or more tapped in, or like a coach or somebody who is tapped into their intuition and like higher wisdoms and stuff, to sort of like get that permission slip. It's like it's okay to like actually feel into something when you feel pulled to go somewhere and do something crazy, right? When like the mind is telling you like that's just insane, like why would you do that? I feel like, well, there's something telling me I should go. And like, because first you'll be like, that's stupid, like there's no sixth sense, we just have like a rational mind, and what I see is what I see, what I do is what I do, and that's it. Like don't do anything crazy, because why would I be a crazy person? So I think also just sort of like learning to lean into it and just be like, well, this makes no sense to me at all, but like I just really feel this pull, or like so I think that really like helps to sort of, and then you sort of start playing with it, and like at the beginning it's really scary, but I think for me personally, like I just have that personality and I just have that travel background. Like I said, I started traveling when I was very young, and like I had no money. Like I genuinely had no money. And so I was like, I was au pairing, I was couch surfing, I was like, catching rides with people and just like sleeping on the couch of a friend of a friend of a friend, and things like that. And so I had to like, it was like, I was really, really pushed outside of my comfort zone. And I learned to like follow that and trust that. And like my passion for like my curiosity and drive to like get to know the world and travel and experience things and meet people and just live out fully. Like it was stronger than my fear. Like my mom always back in survival instincts. So maybe I'm not a good example, but I think like what I want to say, that through those experiences, I learned how to trust, and I learned to sort of live that sort of lifestyle. So, sometimes like some decisions, they're really like, it feels really, really crazy, but it's like, I've done a few things when I was like, well, I'm going to move to a foreign country and do something that nobody I know has ever done. So it's like, I sort of trained myself from like the smaller things to do something like that and sort of live that lifestyle. So like when I started doing my inner work and started like, tapping into awareness and consciousness and meditating and into my, like felt sense, and started tapping into my intuition, like, even though the concept was sort of new to me, but like I actually had been always doing it. So like, I guess it wasn't that difficult for me, because I didn't think I was following my intuition back then, but I was like following my sort of excitement. And I guess I have a really good story. So my spiritual awakening coincides perfectly with my COVID story, like to the day. I was living in China before COVID, and I was going just to travel in Indonesia with a friend to trek in the jungles of Sumatra for like a month. And the night before I left my accommodation in Beijing, China, I was supposed to be writing essays, and I was just like procrastinating, listening to podcasts. And I discovered this like breathwork meditation technique for a podcast. And coincidentally, I started talking with this guy that like I had met before, and we just like, you know, like the connection and like sparkles and whatnot. And then like coincidentally, he also does like different, but also like a breathwork meditation technique. And then he's like supposed to be going to my home country. So he was from the UK. And he was going to be in my home country, like doing a retreat in like February. And so this is like January 9th, right? Like before COVID starts. And so he's like, oh, like, you know, like, how long are you going to be in China? Like, I'd like to see you again. And I was like, well, I'm here for like at least 2 years. He was like, oh, what a shame. Like, maybe I'll see you somewhere. Like, and I'm like, unless there's an emergency in February and, you know, like I have to return to the homeland when you're doing your retreat there or whatever. Right. So anyway, like I go traveling. And so, yes, I discovered this breathwork meditation on that day. And so like, I'm fascinated. So I'm just like reaching out to like their online communities, and some woman reaches out to me and invites me to a retreat in Bali. And I'm like, well, as I'm planning to, you know, go to Bali, because I've already been, but like, I'm going to be in Indonesia. Like, I don't have a plan for my whole trip to Indonesia. Like, it's a cheap flight. Like, I'll go to your retreat. So I go to her retreat, and there I have a human design reading. So for those of you who don't know what human design is, it's kind of like something like astrology meets quantum physics, just chakras. Like it's like a personality astrology typology thing, and it can be really helpful. So I was, you know, at that time I like didn't really believe in any of that stuff. Like I was completely new to any of this, right? Like rational girl, woohoo.
Yeah.
So I'm like, but you know, I was like, what the heck? Like I'm already here. I already spent way too much money. Like what is like another like $40 for a reading gonna change, right? Like whatever, like I'm just gonna do all the things. And so what she tells me that based on my type, she said like I'm somebody who needs to respond to things. So like there's like I think it's the generators who like sort of like they sort of generate the ideas, which I'm not. I'm a manifesting generator, I believe. I forgot. Yeah. And so it's like she was like your sacral chakra is like your main sort of like authority. So it's like when you don't know, like ask sort of your belly, like you can even try to make sound. And it's like, and you're meant to respond. So like when something happens, like feeling to your belly, like how do you feel? And she's like, you're like, in order to follow your like your highest path and like your intuition and what's meant for you, like you need to listen to your excitement. So it's like when something really excites you, you're like, oh my God, like even if it makes no sense, just follow it. And so like I'm just sort of like, well, here's the thing, like now I'm like, you know, and COVID had started, so I'm like I'm feeling into these two things. Like one thing is like I'm discovered this breathwork thing, and I want to get like an instructor training. And so like I already have a flight to Vietnam. I can go back to China, but like I was crossing through Vietnam and I already have my flights. So I'm thinking about like volunteering in like a retreat center in Vietnam and like learning how to facilitate and like teach, you know, breathwork and meditation. And it super excites me. And then there's this other thing. I'm just like kind of like, it's totally crazy, but I'm like, you know, I met this guy once, but like it's in my home country. So it's like not totally crazy. Like I'm flying to a random country on the other side of the world. Right. So like, you know, at least like if things don't work out, like I'm going to stay with my family and all that. So it's not like totally nuts. But it sort of excites me to like, just sort of like buy a flight and just fly and meet this guy. And so she's like, listen, like I've had people who like, they bought like a, you know, like European bought like their flight to the other side of the world to Canada to like be with a guy, whatever, like with their last money, had absolutely no plan, no project, no idea what they're going to do there. She flew there and then things just fall into place, and then business opportunities, this and that, like, you know, ended up being the best opportunities of their life. You just never know. Like just follow it. Like, sounds like you're excited. Just sounds like it's a wild card. Just do it. And I'm like, So I flew to Europe for like 5 different countries. And like, no, 2 days before I flew out, the guy messages me and he's like, shouldn't you like be in quarantine or something before you come from Asia? And I'm like, well, like, I haven't even been in China for like 6 weeks. Like why would I be in quarantine? Like, I'm not in China. And so he goes full on arrogant on me. So I never ended up seeing this guy, right? But I flew to Europe, which is where I was supposed to be for COVID, you know, like I can't imagine I was stuck somewhere in like Vietnam while trying to study full time. And like I've heard stories from people who were like stuck in Vietnam. Like I just met a friend who like moved to Vietnam during COVID, and she spent like 2 months in quarantine, like in hotels, like, you know, just like things worked out, you know, like we don't always know why we are called to do what we're called to do.
Exactly.
Like, one thing, like we're supposed to meet a person and we think it means something romantic, or like it's our soulmate, or like they're going to have a job opportunity for us, and maybe they end up breaking our heart, or like they're a total asshole and the job opportunity is total nonsense, right? But like we were supposed to go and talk to them and like maybe even get hurt so that we go for a healing, and then something beautiful flourishes out of it, right? So yeah, anyway, just a fun story and like, you know, what it can look like when you're just following your intuition. Like sometimes you think you know what, you're like, oh my God, like it's gonna be, and sometimes the experience you have at that moment of what you thought would be great is not great. It's like anything but great. But what comes after is like the most beautiful, you know, development, that like flower blossoming. So it's we just never know. But like, yeah, I got this, it's funny because it's a funny finger, but I got this tattooed.
There you go.
Trust.
What does it say? Oh, trust. Love it.
There we go. Only when she was tattooing it, I was like, maybe it's not the best finger, but
you put your middle finger up.
I was like, trust. Yeah. So it's it's to me, it's like for me, that's something that I really like, that I'm so grateful for, again, for like all the travels and all the experience I have. It's like, you know, like being out there, like literally being somewhere in a foreign country where you don't know anyone, and like you like can't afford a hotel, and like you don't know how you're going home. Like, there's no train, and like literally I would like be flying somewhere in 2 days, and I don't know where I'm sleeping for 2 nights. And I'm like, you know what, it's gonna be fine. Like, you know what, I don't have like, I'm enjoying my life right now so much that like I don't have time to like bother, like to worry about this. Like it's gonna be fine. And then like the next day, this lady I've never met on the internet messages me that like she would love for me to stay, and she's so sorry I can't make my way there. So she's gonna ask her son, who's gonna pick me up at the airport, drive me for 2 hours to her place, and then drive back home to his place, right? And I'm like, I don't even know this lady. Like, I just told her to stay with her because I can't get there. And it's like, what I realize is like, the more I surrender and trust, and I just know that it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And the more I'm like, how am I going to do it? Like, I should probably take care of this. I should probably do some research. I should probably at least talk to some people, or like really check on this. Like, the more I'm like, I should probably do something, the more I'm like starting to worry, and the more I'm like starting to create the fact that it's not okay, and it's not going to be okay by itself. And the more I'm just like, I don't even have time to worry about this. Like, universe, please sort it out. It's like, here, you good. So it's like, yeah, for me, that's one part of the trust. And then the other part that came through very strongly recently, and like people around me have been telling me that, like friends and like people who are like, you know, healers, and like just, I sort of like just all of a sudden I have this influx of all these people who just sort of flock into my life, who are like mediums and like shamans, and like just have gifts, and they just give me advice. And I'm like, thank you. Where did you come from? Like, I didn't know I needed you, but that's great. And what has been coming through was really like, trust yourself. Like I've just been going through like so much confusion with things that have been happening for me, and especially since I've drank medicine in the jungle in October. So there, you know, it's like you see big things and you don't understand them, and you're going crazy, and you're like, somebody please help me interpret this crazy stuff that's going on. And what I've been hearing is like, trust yourself. Like, you're the only one who knows the answer. And like, you know, so that was like sort of like I've already like, trust has been such a big
Mm.
mantra for me. And like now when there's like this aspect of trust yourself, it like, I was like, I'm getting this tattooed because I love it, because it's like the only thing that you need.
Yes. Trust is huge. And like you said, that beautifully sums up the kind of second way. If the first way is accessing the body or feeling into decisions, the second way then is trusting or surrendering to the universe. And that is initially, again, not an easy thing to do. But if you do this kind of work that I talk about every week, which is kind of opening up to support, which is the third way, which I'll go into in a minute, opening up to support from others, it's like you go from, I speak to so many people or message people every day who come into the group and they're doing this whole spiritual development and healing journey on their own. It's like, well, I'm watching videos, I'm meditating on my own. And my first question is, well, how's that going for you? And it's like, well, not great, actually, which is why I'm here. So a big part of the work that we do is actually opening up your system to receive support. So not just meditating on your own all day. If you meditate on your own the whole time, it's great, but you're largely going to be stuck in your own trauma and conditioning. So the mind is kind of like going off into problem-solving mode. Oh, what have I got to do today? X, Y, Z. Oh, what happened yesterday? How could I have done that differently? And there's very little stillness. The mind is very active. The whole point of the work that we do is to actually open up to support. So you're meditating and sitting with others, not just anybody, but people who've done a lot of work on themselves and have found trust and ground and safety within themselves. And as you sit with other people who've got that energetic template, absolutely, your system will start to naturally template theirs. So it's not like you can actually start to really accelerate your own evolution by sitting with people who've done a lot of this work themselves, sitting with people one-on-one, sitting in group settings as well. You're opening up to your system instead of being basically when you work on your own the whole time. It's like your system closed off. You start sitting with others or working with the plants as we've done as well. It's like you're opening up to something greater, to opening up to a greater support. I think when you start doing that, there's a trust that starts to build. It's not like you can think your way to trust. Oh, I should trust the universe. It's like it's a felt sense of like, I am supported, I am safe, I am connected. And that what that brought to mind, that story that you just said there was really beautiful. I don't know if you ever read Autobiography of a Yogi, but there's Paramahansa Yogananda. He basically lived his life like that. He's passed away now, but he was in a 20th century yogi that kind of traveled around India looking for his guru. And he goes with his brother, and his brother is like the voice of the ego, basically. Oh, shouldn't we have like planned ahead? We've got no money. What are we doing here? We should go home. And he just says, Divine Mother will provide. That is another way of saying just like trust, basically. He's done so much work on himself. He's got such a deep connection to source or God or the universe, whatever you want to say. He knows. And like you said, Claire, we end up in these tricky situations, but we're always okay. Like something always happens. We always, and that's what happened to them. It was like somebody would just turn up and say, do you want to stay at my house tonight? Or for him, it was a bit different. Like he's a very spiritual, he's a deeply spiritual person. Somebody would come up and say, oh, you're my guru. You must stay with me tonight. A complete stranger or something like that. As he was going to, find his master, his guru in the mountains, which again, he had no idea who they were, but he just had an intuition that he would find them there. But it's an interesting story because everywhere he went with no like financial support, something would happen. The universe would support him and guide him on his journey, So it's like a big part of it is you need to find a way of going beyond mind. If you live from mind, it will constantly keep you trapped in your small self. But by working with others, like you start to open up your system, you start to open up some support. And by the way, the only way that your mind is going to come to rest is when it feels safe, connected, and supported by another. Unless if you're working on your own, your mind is going to be reactive. So you have to work with others. When you feel supported and connected with another person, the heart chakra begins to open up. And only then does the mind start to quieten down. And then, which is what I do, you can actually contact your intuition. When my mind is quiet, my heart's open, I'll ask the question to my guide, my own guides, is there anything I need to know at this point? Anything that can help me in the day to come? And when I've got that, feel like I've got a connection to source, the mind is quiet. There's like a stream of information that will come through. Often very simple, just like focus on your own healing. Or, for the last month, it's been like focus on your integration after Costa Rica. It's very simple often, but that I always trust that much more than the mind.
We're complicated. We're like, what should I do? Maybe I should do this program. I should read this book. I should journal for an hour. Blah 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 blah. I need to go into this whole like procedure of, and it's like one word, like just and that word can be patience actually, which is like just don't do anything. Like just be patient. Like there's nothing for you to do, right? And I think that's beautiful. It's just like, and that's definitely something I can relate to. It's like, I'm like trying to do, what is the next thing I need to do in order to I keep being told by all these guides and like, your gifts are opening up. They're just opening up right now. And I'm like, where are the gifts? There's no gift. And I'm like, what are the gifts? You're telling me like they're being downloaded. Like, I don't feel them. And it's like, what do you want me to do? Like, do I need to go and do more medicine? And it's like, no, like nothing. There's like, the more you do something, the more you're pushing it away, right? So it's like for me, like really right now I'm sort of in that place of like, just I'm good, like patience, just enjoying life, being in the present moment, and just just for now, like, yeah, like I'm where I'm supposed to be. And again, like trusting that, and like, you know, like everything unfolds in its own time. And I wanted to like speak to something of what you said, but I guess it's just, if you have anything else to say, I'll just let you flow, and then pick up on that, wherever you guys.
Yeah. I've always got something to say on this subject because I love it. From living a life a bit like you did from the small cell. And this is the thing I always say on these lives. I'm not like, we're not saying like we're like the finished article. I mean, there's always a battle. If you're a human being, it's going to be challenges. You know, we've still got this human mind that's always trying to stop us in our tracks, and it's beautiful. Really, it's that resistance that helps us to grow, basically. But it just like when you said that, then it was like when I was in Costa Rica after the 3 ceremonies, I was like, felt completely reborn, felt like my chakra system was completely upgraded, and that something amazing was going to come when I came back. And for the last month, I've kind of generally slipped into my old life, basically, and nothing feels like it's changed. But my intuition, again, when I check in with the guides, it's like, no, be patient, like trust the process. For the next month, all you're doing, you're meditating, you're getting support from others, you're being in nature, and just let it unfold. You know, often evolution doesn't happen like a big, well, for me anyway, it's not like a big bang happens and you're transformed. Even if you go and do plant medicine in the jungle for 2 weeks.
It could happen, and it does happen to people.
A Kundalini awakening.
I would not want that to happen to me. Like that is not safe. Like so there's somebody in my space right now who's going through something like this, and it's been I believe induced, like it's been forced by that person.
Really?
Like I need to like get to know more. And this person has been working with substances, and not like, and substances, you know, they're beautiful. They can open you up to things that, you know, it's like, it's interesting. I think we've spoken about this the last time when we spoke about the medicine. Like I had never done any medicine, any substances whatsoever, like any mind altering substances ever before I drank ayahuasca. And because I had just so much, like, you know, it's like the societal like conditioning about how bad it is, and you know, bad influence, and good people don't do that, and you know, it can be dangerous and whatnot. And like, yeah, for sure, it can be dangerous. Like anything can be dangerous. Any medicine, any sort of, you know, big expanded practice can be dangerous.
Poison. Yeah.
But like now, you know, I've really opened up to it, and like, so like, and then I like after like just people have been flocking into my space, and I ended up, you know, living with a guy who grows mushrooms, and then I was like, oh, like it's just been so much in my space. Like now I'm curious, like I want to experiment with that. And it started again, like it was so supportive, and I've, you know, leaned into that for a little bit, and I was like, oh my God, like I want to do that all the time, because it's just like it accelerates my process, right? And now I realize like you know, it was like I had a little bit, and like, you know, in like the first month and a half of the year, and it's been a very potent journey. But now I'm like, okay, like now I'm good, like I feel it, like I'm good, like I can't even touch it, I can't even like microdose, because like some people microdose, like it's just like it doesn't really affect you, like it just makes you more focused or whatever. I can't even do that. My body's like, no, like we can't. Like, we need to like do our own thing, like because it adds a layer of intensity that you don't always necessarily need, and you like don't and shouldn't be going like 1,000,000 miles an hour. And so like there's somebody I know who like, you know, was like, oh, I need to take more, and like, you know, like lean into this, and my gifts are opening, and I'm seeing all these things and past lives and healing, and it wasn't necessarily also like natural substances.
Right.
So like they're just going through this process, which is like scary. And I'm like, okay, like it's like I just take it as like a sign for me, like, yeah, patience, love, and grace. You have your own process. Like, and again, it's like the mind, like for me, I was in a like I drank ayahuasca at the end of October. And I haven't really done anything between then and like first half of January, or even almost like February. I've basically done nothing. I've just been traveling, and I've just been chilling at home, meditating for most of the day. Generally, I spent the whole month of like December and even like November, I was just meditating most of the time.
Yes, same here.
Yeah. And in December, it came to a point, I thought like for almost a week, I thought I was going insane. Like I was like, I can't take this anymore. Like I'm going insane. I can't, I don't want to, like, please, like shut it off. And And like what I'm realizing now, or like when I've taken some mushrooms, it's like what I'm realizing, it's like when I took some mushrooms, there were like some gifts that started opening up for me. Like I started seeing auras for the first time and things like that. And I realized these gifts are opening up when I take a substance because I have these gifts.
Yeah.
Because it's not because the substance is borrowing me gifts. I have
yes.
these.
It's uncovering something. Yeah.
It's allowing me to access them. Why can I only access them with a substance? Because this doesn't allow me to access it, because it's terrified out of its wits, because it's like the rational mind and like the, like the reptilian brain, like the ego, the default mode network, like it's like trying to control everything, trying to control, like you cannot go into this process, you cannot have this gift because you're going to be too crazy, like you're going to be too loud, you're going to be too much, you're going to be too insane, people are going to look at you like, what the heck is going on with her? It's going to be your life, you're going to be ostracized, you're going to be, it's not safe. Don't even do that. Like, don't even. And I just like observe myself. Like, I'm just like talking to my mind, like, let go. And it's like, no. I'm like, let go. Like, it's okay. Like, make some sound, like sing a song. And it's like, no, nobody can hear us. And it's interesting. And it's just like, in like the last time I took some mushrooms, like it was literally like me for 2 hours fighting my mind. I was like, let go. And the mind was like, no, we can't. No. And so it's like what I got to understand from all of this, like what the point of what I'm saying is that it's like you want to, like you really want to be gentle with yourself, because like what you've been, like the mind does not want to let go. And like, I know I have gifts. Like, I know I can tap into things. I know like I have intuition. I know all the answers, and I don't know the answers, and I don't have these gifts because this is not letting me go there just yet. And what I've learned is that patience is what I need. And like, it's not going to serve me if I try to force it. It's not going to serve me if I'm like, okay, I want to go right now full speed because I can, because it's there. And like, it's like, it's just, yeah. And then like, so that's the mind. And then is also what you're talking about, right? Like there's all these emotions in the body, and like, we're like slowly attuning to them. And like, it's like what you said, it's so difficult to go into these dark places and into these like difficult things, and to like have that discernment, even to like work with the mind, especially when we're starting out, when we don't have that discernment and we don't feel safe and we don't know what safety even feels like, and we don't have any support. So like, that's why it's, like right now I'm at a point where I can just sit with myself and deal with these things, sit with these emotions and get all these insights, and trust myself that I have the discernment and that I have the answers. But for the past 4 years, right, I've been working with people, and I've been working with coaches, and I've had support, and I've been like spamming my coach's inbox with like, this is what's happening, like, what's going on, like, what does it mean, right? And just sitting with so many different individuals who all have so much different medicine. And like, right now, it's like whenever I go for a difficult emotional experience, like there's like, before I would be like, oh my God, I need to like go eat something. Cause it's like, I don't drink alcohol, or like, I don't, do things like that. But for me, it's like food, right? Some people are like, oh, I need to go smoke a cigarette, or, whatever it is, right? Like I need to like hush it down. For me, like now, like whenever I feel a little bit like uncomfortable, it's like, I need to, like, there is like, oh, maybe I should eat something. And it's like, no, like, I don't want to eat something. Like, I need to sit with someone. Like, like the first thing I do, it's like, I reach out for support. I'm like, the minute I feel like I'm like squirmy, I'm like, support. Anyone for support.
Exactly. And I do it now. Anyone in my community will know this. Generally around this time, or maybe a bit later when I got my daughter to bed, what I do is I get a minion. And if anyone hadn't heard that term before, it's basically sitting with somebody like Claire or myself and just sitting with our present moment felt experience together, get that support. And it doesn't matter if you're not in the same room together, like Claire's in Colombia, I'm in the UK, doesn't matter. We'll still feel the energetic connection and the support, because we're talking about a dimension beyond space and time, basically. So that's the amazing thing about this work. You can do it from the comfort of your own home, wherever you're in pajamas. You can still, whenever you need it, you can get support. You can ask for somebody to hold space for you, and you'll get support. Incredible time that we're living through. I think often we take for granted a bit, like we can do this now and connect instantly on a call with someone on the other side of the world. and we can heal at any point in the day, you know, with somebody on the other side of the world or wherever it might be. It's incredible the time we're living through. It's a huge opportunity to accelerate our evolution and our healing. But a couple of things that really resonated for me, what you said there. Number one, yes, not pushing the accelerator pedal the whole time. Again, I think that comes from the mind. It's kind of like this, well, I need to, you know, spiritually evolve myself as much as possible in this lifetime. So I'm going to do it all now, and I'm going to keep drinking plant medicine or whatever it might be. That for me is like, you know, if you've got your foot on the accelerator pedal in the car, eventually you're going to come off the road. And that's not the way that we're designed as human beings. You know, you can't just keep, you know, going to those places, those higher dimensions.
Right.
That's not what this is about. It's about integrating the experience.
Yeah.
And it helping you in human form. It's not about escaping to this other dimension the whole time and just skipping
even
ahead.
If it's not just the high dimension. It's just like, even if it's just healing your own trauma, it's like going into that high intensity. Like, it's like our nervous system has a certain capacity, and like, you don't want to burn the circuits as well. You know,
exactly.
It's like even with your own healing, like, it's like sometimes you just need a break. Like, you can't just, okay, like today, what's the biggest trauma that I can heal today? And like, just go full on every day. Like, no, like you're going to burn your circuit. Like, you need to rest and integrate and rest and integrate and rest and integrate.
Exactly. And the work we do is very much like, okay, what's there in the moment? It's not going after anything
right now. Exactly.
It's just like, yeah, what's here? Sometimes you sit with someone else that's like, wow, that was incredible. I felt completely connected to source or love, or whatever you want to term it. Sometimes you sit with someone else, it's like, oh, okay, tightening in a particular chakra, and you sit with that for 15, 20 minutes, you know, and you just trust the body. And that's that word trust again. Whatever's the body wants to bring up today, I'm going to sit with it. And it's the ability, it's about building the ability to be with what is. No aversion to the painful stuff and no clinging to the pleasurable stuff. Just like, okay, I trust this, whatever it is the best thing for my evolution. I'm going to sit with it. I'm going to feel into it. That takes a lot of work. And I said, I had someone contact me recently who said, oh, I just want to join the community. I don't want any one-on-one coaching. I was like, that doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that, because you throw yourself into this work and you haven't got anyone to guide you. You know, it can bring up some very, very difficult stuff. And, you know, the mind can have a lot of questions.
It can create a distortions as well. Like I said, when you don't have that discernment and like when you, so it's like, I don't want people to get confused, and I don't want this to the message come across like as something that I don't mean. Like, absolutely trust yourself. Like, you got it. You got all the answers. Yeah. And when you first start out, you don't necessarily have the discernment because of all the conditioning, because of all the trauma, because of all like the rubble that's on top of like all of your wisdom centers, all of your intuition. It's like all the hurt that we're carrying, like it creates these distortions. Like you think you're right, but you're not. You're just hurt. Like somebody, you know, somebody looks at you sideways and you just think like this person totally wronged me. And maybe they didn't wrong you. Like maybe they're actually right, but you're just so hurt. You just feel like you've been violated, like, you know, by something that they said or did, but maybe they didn't do anything wrong. Maybe you just really like, you know, you're just, it's in so many, and it's nothing personal. It's nothing wrong. It's like, we live in a society like people constantly overreact and like hurt other people. And it's like, we've like, you know, you lost the bat. Like, we don't know where this is. So it's like, it takes a lot of time and discernment, and it takes, I think, working with people who have embodied that, like who have that embodied knowledge. Because it's like, if it's only about knowledge, like you can read a book, but like many of you have read 1,000 books and just deal with the same shit.
Makes no difference.
So it's like
it's
working with somebody who is like, who lives the truth, who like lives the way, who embodies these wisdoms. Like you can see, like for me, like when I was working with my coaches, for me, like when I was listening to them do lives, like for me, the most valuable thing ever is when people share their stories from their, like what I just shared about like my experience, you know, because it's like, what does it actually what does it actually mean to live in trust?
Yeah.
What does it actually mean to follow your intuition? Like, I can tell you, yeah, you just do something crazy when, you know, but like, what does that actually mean? But then like, you hear somebody's story, and like, it can be something so minute. Like, I don't know, maybe Mark shares something about a day, you know, with his daughter, what happened and what his wife said. And he's like, this is how I reacted. And this is how I, you know, would have reacted 2 months ago. And today I reacted differently, or like I reacted in a way that I'm not so proud of. And like, this is why I don't feel proud of myself. And this is what I'm going to do. And like, it's very vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I feel like those are the actual diamonds. It's like you stop in your tracks and you're like, wow, like I had no idea that it's possible to live that way. Like I had no idea that like human relationships, like family relationships, like, you know, like I had no idea this is possible. Like I've never met anybody who talks to their wife that way. For example, you know, I'm just giving an example. It's like, to me, like that's the most valuable, to like see like a role model, like really talk about like mundane day-to-day things and just see how they operate in the world and how they catch themselves and what like their mental processes are and what their emotional processes are and how they incorporate these. For me, like that's like, sort of like learning that discernment. And then you kind of be like, what would, like, if you look up to somebody and you feel like they embody something that you want to embody and like live in a certain way that you would like to live, it's like, what would they do in a given situation, right? So it's like, but yeah, it's like when you have direct access to them, and you can also tap into the felt sense, like just like what Mark is saying, right? Like you sit with somebody, you sit with your coach, or you sit with like a partner who, you know, has done a lot of work. You're like, when you're not sure, when you're like, I'm not sure, like maybe it's my trauma, maybe it's my intuition, and like you sit with somebody else and they regulate you, so they get you out of the trauma response if you're in one. And then like, do I still feel that way when I know now that I'm grounded and centered and regulated with another person? Because like as soon as you sit with another person, you start regulating, right? Like you there's like an energy exchange that flows back and forth, and like there's like these energies just start to harmonize.
Yes. Oh, so true. I mean, this for me is a long conversation about living in alignment. I don't want to go for too long of a day, but for me, one of my guides always says to me, it's like, don't make any decisions or take any actions from fear. Very simple advice. It's like, you've got to check in with yourself. And now it's like, if I know I'm in fit now, very often when I'm tired, like late in the evening, that's the time where I'm like, I kind of like take everything the mind is telling me with a pinch of salt, because it's kind of, I know there's a general fear that comes up at nighttime. Often when you in the morning, then the mind is completely different. And for me, there's a time between about 10 and 2 when my energy is at its highest and most aligned. That's the time when I take action and make decisions, because I know that's my kind of highest vibration time of the day. So that's a very simple way to ensure you're creating a life of alignment. If you're always taking decisions and actions from fear, you're going to create a life that reflects that. You're going to create a low vibration life. If you're always taking decisions and actions from a higher vibration, then you're going to create a life that reflects that. So that's been really important in my own journey. I just wanted to touch on that. Like, I did 15 months with the coaches we're talking about today, one-on-one work and group work. Claire, I imagine we've done a similar amount of time. And what you eventually, once you've done a lot of deep work like that in a community with a group of people who've done a lot of work on themselves, it's like you can eventually become your own coach or your own guru. Because
you stand on your own 2 feet. Doesn't that feel good? It's like, I have feet I can stand on. Ooh.
Exactly. And so if you ever got a question in your life now, you can go inside and ask the question and feel into the answer, and eventually get to the point where you don't need a coach or a guru or anybody. Because, and this is the work I do with people now, it's like I guide them. I'm not giving them the answers to everything or trying to think I've got the answers to everything. It's like guiding you towards your own intuition. Absolutely. So much of the work I do is like, ask the question, get in touch with yourself and your felt sense, ask the question, and then see what arises. But there's a lot of work to do to get through a lot of trauma and conditioning, a lot of energetic blockages to get down into your own connection to source. That's what it's all about. Once you've got that, you realize you have all the answers within. You don't necessarily need anyone to guide you anymore. You don't need a guru to look to. You don't need a coach to look to. It's like, you are the coach, you are the guru. And that's amazingly empowering, you know, when you know you can just ask the question of yourself and receive an aligned answer. Makes a huge difference. Absolutely. Just one question that came up today, which I thought was interesting. I wasn't sure how to answer this one, actually. What reflections do you have on healing during a time of genocide? Oof, that word genocide brings up a lot. But for me, it's like, I'm not really sure what genocide has to do with it, really. It's kind of like, when isn't there a time of genocide? There's always something going on in the world. So why does that have to dictate whether you should heal or not? For me, it's like, what essentially comes up for me there is like, oh, the world's having a terrible time. I feel guilty. I shouldn't heal myself. So I think that's something you probably need to look at within yourself. Why does what's happening in the external world dictate what with the work you do on yourself? Like, there's no time that isn't relevant for healing for me. But what about you, Claire? I wonder if anything else comes up for you.
I'm not sure if I understand the question. Like, I'm just trying to understand. I think like the way I see it, where I'm guessing where the person is coming from is, I think I understand it the same way as you do. Like, I'm wondering if there's like a subtone of like, we shouldn't heal when there's a genocide. I don't know if that's what the author means. I guess there could be like two interpretations. One is like healing of self, or like the other one, maybe they mean like healing for the planet, which like, I think either way, like you should especially do your own healing, and like you should especially do any sort of healing because I mean, essentially, the truth of the universe, if you ask me, is we are all one. Like, we're one consciousness, one universe, one planet. We're one soul, really. We are all one. And what you do for you, you do for everybody else. And what you don't give to yourself, you're not giving to everybody else.
Exactly.
You don't love yourself, you're not loving everybody. You're not loving the other person next to you. You're not if you deny the godliness that you are, you deny the godliness in another, and you deny God. Like, and it's God is a very charged word. I still have a lot of issues using it, but like just the divinity, the sacredness, like something higher, like something. I believe if people are in your space, Mark, I believe people are sort of have a spiritual inclination. So I hope that's great to say these things.
Sure.
But that's what I believe. And it's hard, right? And I believe me, like, it's like for me, it really started, like I've known this, but I didn't like feel this. And I really feel this since my medicine experience, because I experienced it. I experienced, and I'm just getting goosebumps saying this. Like, I experienced being one with all and everything. I saw my soul. I talked to my soul. I saw the divine line coming up on me. And it's like, we all are one. And it's hard to understand it. And like this thing, again, it doesn't comprehend it, but it's like, the more you feel it, the more you like understand. And it's like, whatever you do for yourself, you're doing for everybody else. And it's like, even forget everything I just said, like just put it on the side. But like, I have this cup, right? And it's like, I want to help someone. Here, Mark, I'll pour you some of my coffee. And it's empty. And then I need coffee, and I'm a coffee addict. So like now I didn't even start on my coffee, but I saw Mark needed it. So I gave him all my coffee, because like genocide, right? Like Mark is like needing to do some work. Like I really need to give him my coffee, because like it's really, really urgent for Mark to do some work, right? Like he's leading this life. Like I'm just sitting here, like he doesn't need me that much. So like, even if I'm a coffee addict and I really need my coffee and I haven't had a sip, like I'm going to give it to Mark first, because that's the priority. Now what happens, right? Like Mark is excited to have this conversation with me, and like he's planning to like ask me all these questions, and he made everybody excited that I'm, let's just suppose, right? He's like excited that I'm going to answer this question that only I can answer, and like he told everybody in his group, and everybody's waiting for it. And now I didn't have my coffee, so like we come halfway through, and Mask asked me this question, and I'm like fainting here because I'm a coffee addict and I didn't have my coffee. And then what happens? It's like I'm unwell. Like I got pissed because I'm like frustrated from not having had my caffeine, and like it's messing with my brain and my physiology. I get grumpy and I start saying stupid things, and then Mark is pissed, and then the whole group is pissed, and like I have a horrible day, and everybody has a horrible day. Now, bad example, but like this is how it works. It's like
you can't pour from an empty cup. Basically, you can't pour from an empty cup. Yeah.
When you don't take care of yourself, what ends up happening is you end up running dry. And eventually you'll collapse, you'll crash, you'll get sick, you'll have an accident, whatever it is, like you'll run out of money, something. And then you're going to be in an emergency. And then you're going to be the one calling out for help. And then everybody else is going to stop if they love you. And if they live from that same mentality, that same sort of, like, I need to help like everybody else first consciousness, like that sacrifice mentality, like everybody else, no matter what they're doing, no matter how busy they are and how needy they are at that moment, they'll have to stop in their tracks and be like, oh my goodness, like Claire is needing me right now. She's in an emergency. So even if I don't have enough money for myself, I'm going to give money to her, because, even if like I don't have enough emotional resource for myself right now, I need to give to her because she's really, really needy. So like, it's just, and we just perpetually like recreate that, and we just push like the ball of neediness, so to say, like from one to another. Whereas if we focus on ourselves first, then we can really give from the overflow. This is what I.
Yes, exactly. Couldn't have put it better myself. Guidance often most common guidance I get from my own guides is put your own healing and evolution first. And I think that's the way we change the planet. We've got to heal and evolve ourselves individually. If then you have an overflow of resource, fine, go out there and serve others and stop. I don't know if you can stop genocide. I think the world is the way it is. It's the balance of light and dark, but feel called to help in a certain direction, great. But if you're doing that from a place of feeling under-resourced, you're probably going to create more harm than good, to be honest. So you've always got to work on yourself first. If you get to a place where you're overflowing with love and joy, then go out there, spread the message, help where you can. But until then, focus on yourself. And you don't feel guilty for that. It's the most important work we can do in this lifetime or any lifetime.
Yeah. I guess I just want to add very quickly, like, and that's not to downplay the gravity and the seriousness of the things that are happening in the world. And I think it's really beautiful to have people, it's
you're concerned about that.
I really want to I really commend that people actually think about these things. It's like, it's really forefront on your mind and just care so deeply about the world and other people's well-being and suffering. And I guess just I would offer, like, when you can do both, you can include it, like you can do your own practice. It's like, so for example, this mini practice that Mark talks about, like the way we were taught how to do it is like, for 5 minutes, I solely receive and Mark's give to me. And then for 5 minutes, I solely give and Mark receives. So that's the way we were taught. But what we actually end up doing now, like pretty much all of the time, is like, there's no give and receive. There's a flow, there's an exchange of information. And it happens even like when both people sort of need resource, like we just do that. We just sit together for 10 minutes and there's just an energy flow. And it doesn't mean that one is giving and one is being replenished and the other one is like pouring out without receiving that. It's not true. It's like the energy is flowing and you're both receiving healing at the same time. So what you can do is you can sit in meditation. You can sit with the intention of healing for yourself, but also for others who are suffering. And it doesn't mean that you're going to receive less or they're going to receive less. You're both going to receive. Again, it's what you believe. Like if you absolutely believe that's not possible, then it's not going to be possible because you're stopping it with your mind. But it's absolutely what happened. So I would maybe just an invitation that if that's something that's so dear in your heart and you feel personally called to address these things and invest your energy and send healing, and send prayers, like please do. And you can, if you feel, you can also do it, you can do both at the same time.
Yes. I actually do an exercise that in my weekend group meditations, which I did last weekend. I'll be doing another one in mid-March, but I have to stop there, Claire. Actually, my daughter is kind of is going to want dinner in the background, so I'll have to go. But beautiful reflections. Thank you, Claire, so much for joining today. Hope everyone found that an expanding conversation. I'm sure I did anyway. I'm sure everyone else did as well. But yes, thank you so much for joining, Claire. I'll wrap up here.